Welcome to a course on complex analysis. When the limit approaches infinity or the limit value is infinity, can it happen? Yes, of course, it's happened in real analysis. So the same thing can be happened in complex analysis as well. How is it going to happen? That is what we are going to explore in this lecture. Come on. So the topic that we are going to see is limits involving the point at infinity. While studying the same ideology in real analysis, there we say when x increases indefinitely, we say x approaches infinity. Or when x decreases indefinitely, we say x approaches minus infinity. Okay, there we were able to relate two values, namely x and y, as either x less than y or x bigger than y or x equals y. Okay, whereas in complex analysis we can either relate this or z1 is not same as z2. So there is no less than or equal to relations in complex analysis, in complex numbers. Okay, since C is not an ordered field, we cannot relate these things like this. So, how is it possible to include infinity in complex plane? Yes, of course it is possible. It means when your value is very away from the origin. That means when your complex value z is very away from the origin, that may be considered in this way. That is, your absolute of z goes to infinity. So we can take this way. It goes to infinity. That is what we are saying. So if your z is somewhere here or somewhere, if this is your z or if this is your z, if this is your z, that's fine. But if your z is very away from the origin, okay, here in diagram I am plotting something like this. So consider this to be 10 to the power this kind of some value. Okay, so if this distance itself is 10 to the power this many value, imagine this distance, okay, in x coordinate as well as in y coordinate. When you take the absolute value of this z, what would happen? It is very away from the origin. So this may happen to be here somewhere, or happen to be here somewhere, or happen to be here somewhere. It can be anywhere. Okay, so in these cases, what I am trying to convey here is that on any direction it can go to infinity. Okay, that is your absolute of that complex number can go to infinity. So along with your complex plane, we just add infinity and we call this as extended complex plane, just like we had extended real numbers. Okay, so now we'll have to consider some mapping which maps, there is a 1 1 and on 2 mapping between extended complex plane and something else. So for which we consider a sphere of this sort which is centered at origin. Okay, here actually what you are going to consider is we can think of a complex plane as passing through the equator of unit sphere. Okay, so we have a unit like I'll have to change the color so that you can see very well. So let me write it in green color so that it can be visible both on black as well as white. Okay, so consider a unit sphere. A complex plane is passing through its equator. Okay, now whatever may be the point that you consider on z, on this plane z, try to connect this point with the north pole of the sphere. Okay, when you try to connect it to this thing, you can see you will have a point which is the intersection of that line and the sphere. That means it cuts the sphere exactly at one point. In this way, you can consider any number of points on the plane, and you can identify some point on the sphere. In this way, you can identify all the points on the sphere except this north pole. Okay, so you cannot associate any point on this complex plane to this north pole. So in that case, what we are going to do is that we are going to associate infinity with this north pole. Okay, so if you have done this way, then all the points on the sphere, that unit sphere, will be in 1-1 correspondence between the points on the extended complex plane. Okay, the sphere that we consider here is called as Riemann sphere. Okay, and this projection is called as stereographic projection. Okay, next we would have to observe some things, that is the unit circle centered at origin in the complex plane corresponds to the upper hemisphere. Upper hemisphere with the equator and the point N deleted. So these are some observations. Okay, that is, like, if you consider the circle centered at origin in C, which means absolute of Z equals 1. This is the circle centered at origin. So the points on the circle will be mapped to the upper hemisphere of this Riemann sphere, but the point N is not included in that. Okay, that the point is not mapped. Okay, now for epsilon positive, if you consider the circle absolute of Z equals 1 upon epsilon. Okay, so this corresponds to the points, on the sphere which are close to epsilon, close to the point N. Okay, so this way what we can say is that absolute of Z, which is bigger than 1 upon epsilon, is called a neighborhood of infinity. Okay, so neighborhood of infinity or epsilon neighborhood of infinity, okay, we may call anyway, right? So if we talk about some point Z in a complex plane, that means we are talking it on the simply the complex plane, not on the extended complex plane. Whenever we talk about infinity, then we go to the extended complex plane. Okay, so based on this, we have a theorem that states if Z0 and W0 are points in the Z and W planes respectively, then the first thing that we have to prove is limit Z approaches Z0, f of Z is infinity if and only if limit Z approaches Z0, 1 upon f of Z is 0. The second result is limit z approaches infinity, f of z is omega naught if and only if limit z approaches 0 to the function f of 1 upon z is w naught. Moreover, the third one, that is limit z approaches infinity f of z is infinity if and only if limit z approaches 0, 1 upon f of 1 upon z is 0. Okay, now we'll have to prove these results. Okay, let us start the proof formally. So to prove one, we assume limit z approaches z naught, f of z is infinity. Then by the definition, so for given epsilon positive, there exists a delta positive such that absolute of f of z minus the limit point. Here the limit point is infinity. So we cannot include infinity, and this is going to be bigger than 1 upon epsilon. Epsilon is assumed to be some smaller positive quantity. So when you take 1 upon epsilon, that is going to be a larger quantity, and you will have to collect the points which are larger than this, whose absolute value is larger than this quantity. Okay, that is what we consider. This is happening whenever 0 less than absolute of z minus z naught is less than delta. Instead of writing this way, you may also write 1 upon absolute of z is less than 1 upon epsilon, that is absolute of 1 upon f of z is less than epsilon. So in other words, this may be written like 1 upon f of z minus 0 is also less than epsilon. Okay, so this tells you what? Hence, actually let me write this way. Hence, limit z approaches z naught, 1 upon f of z is 0. This limit is 0. So once you like okay, now when you assume this one, so this tells you from this you come this way, and this may be written like this, and this may be written like this, and this gives you this one. Okay, so just go backward and you will see the converse part of this theorem. Okay, converse part of this one. So this directly follows from it, so that is why I am not writing it again. Next, now to prove the second one, assume limit z approaches infinity, f of z is w naught. Then by the definition, absolute of f of z minus w naught is less than epsilon whenever absolute of z is bigger than 1 upon delta. That is by the definition, for every epsilon positive there exists a delta positive such that these things are happening. So you have to clearly know for which you will have to take the neighborhood of infinity. So in the previous one, we were supposed to take the infinity for the function f. Infinity is involved with the function f of z. So when you consider here f of z minus infinity is the thing that you are talking about. So that is why you have to consider the epsilon like epsilon neighborhood of infinity for the function f of z. Whereas In the second part, infinity is involved with z. So along with z only, you will have to consider the infinity neighborhood. Okay, so you have this one here. If you are about, look, okay, here given z approaches infinity is equivalent to 1 upon z approaches 1 upon infinity, which is nothing but 0, right? So this may be simply written as 1 upon z approaches infinity. Thus replace z by 1 upon z. Let us have this as equation 1. In equation 1, then we get, so f of 1 upon z minus w naught is less than epsilon whenever 1 upon z is bigger than 1 upon delta. So this may further be written as f of 1 upon z minus w naught absolute of this value is less than epsilon. Whenever, if you just take the reciprocal, so it becomes absolute of z, this is delta, and inequality also reverse, less than delta. So this may also be written as absolute of z minus 0 less than delta. Hence, limit z minus 0 f of 1 upon z is w naught. So we established the result. Now here also you can assume this one, and by the definition of a limit this happens to be true. So when this is true, this will happen. Okay, you can just go backward. Okay, even here. So these are the two-way processes. Next, to prove the third one, if you just blend the first and second, you would get the third one. So how are we going to do it? Let us see now. To prove the third one, like what is given. So we are given that limit z approaches infinity, f of z is infinity. Okay, so let us have limit z approaches infinity, f of z is infinity. So this tells you absolute of f of z is bigger than 1 upon epsilon whenever absolute of z is bigger than 1 upon delta. Okay, so what we can do here is that we can just make the changes over here. So this is absolute of let me have only this way. So bigger than 1 upon epsilon. Is it so? Sorry, what shall I do here? I'll just have this way. It's less than epsilon whenever absolute of 1 upon z is less than delta. Okay, so here what is gonna happen now? Then here z approaches infinity is the thing that we have. So let us make this as z approaches 0. So that is here. So 1 upon z approaches infinity is equivalent to say that z approaches 0. Okay, so let me write this way. So when this happens, here I must have z approaches infinity. So I have changed it to 1 upon this thing. So 1 upon f of 1 upon z minus 0 less than epsilon whenever this happens. So this proves limit z approaches 0 1 upon f of 1 upon z is 0. Okay. Again, this is a two-way. That is why I have not made use of any of the wordings. You can just directly have the reverse inequalities. And this completes the proof of this part. And we have some problems. So what is limit z approaches minus 1 iota times of z plus 3 upon z plus 1. So when your z approaches minus 1, it tend to approach minus, actually tend to approach infinity. So we may have we just take the reciprocal of this one. So z plus 1 upon iota times of z plus 3, and let us see what the limit of this quantity. So this is 0 upon minus iota plus 3, which happens to be 0. Hence, we shall say limit z approaches minus 1 iota times of z plus 3 upon z plus 1 is infinity. If you want, you can directly write from here itself it is infinity. Just what I have done is that I have made use of the first result. Okay, I just evaluated this limit, and with the help of this limit I said we are getting the limit to be infinity for the original problem. Okay, the next one is limit z approaches infinity 2z plus iota upon z plus 1. So this may be written like limit z approaches 0. Okay, what you can do is that you can just replace z with 1 upon z. So 2 times of 1 upon z plus iota upon 1 upon z plus 1, and this again is limit z approaches 0 2 plus iota times of z upon 1 plus z, and you will have divide z on both numerator and denominator. These two gets cancelled, and you are left with limit z approaches 0 2 plus iota times of z upon 1 plus z, and if you give the limit to be 0, you are going to get the limit value is 2. Finally, limit z approaches infinity to z cube minus 1 upon z cube plus 1. So this is same as evaluating limit z approaches 0. You will have to replace 1 upon 2 times of 1 upon z whole cube minus 1 with, like, here you are going to have z squared, not z cube. So in the denominator you have z squared. So 1 upon z whole squared plus 1. Okay, and this may be considered like 1 plus z squared upon z squared. This goes to the numerator, and in the denominator we are going to have 2 minus z cube upon z cube, and like z square and z cube, you are left with only 1z, and that goes to the numerator. So let me write that here. So here you have limit z approaches 0. So it is limit z approaches 0. So this z goes to the numerator, and hence you will have z multiplied with 1 plus z squared upon 2 minus z cube. When you make your z approaches 0, you are going to get 0 multiplied with 1 plus 0 upon 2 minus 0, and that happens to be 0. Okay. So, like, in order to evaluate this, we considered this one and found this limit is 0. Hence, your limit z approaches infinity 2 times of z cube minus 1 upon z square plus 1 is infinity. That is what the third part of this theorem tells us. That is, if limit z approaches infinity, f of z is infinity, this is equivalent to say that limit z approaches 0, 1 upon f of 1 upon z is 0. So we checked this one. So with which we can conclude this is happening. Right? The simple way to identify the limit is 0 is like you have z square and z cube. If you take z square as a common thing out and make your z approaches infinity, Here you will have 0, here you will have 1, here you will be left with z, and here you will have 1 upon z cube. Okay, or if you take z cube itself out, you will have 2 minus 1 upon z cube, so 2 minus 0 thing that you would get, but still you have some z outside, that makes your entire limit to be infinity. Okay, in the upcoming lecture we are going to talk about the continuity of the functions of complex variables. Till then, thank you.